Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Strength, Yoga, and Freedom podcast. Today's episode has special guest Tavi Rose, who is the author of the Chakra and Self-Development Workbook. Now, this workbook walks you through each of the chakras and gives you an idea of how to implement the work on chakra clearing if you've got some blocking going on in there, but really into the work of moving yourself forward, which is what we talk about a lot on this podcast, moving forward in the direction of purpose. And so this is another tool that you have available to you if you'd like to pick up the book. It is available on Amazon, and I am going to put a link in the description of the episode or the show notes so that you can pick it up. But it's yet another tool to use so that you can move your life in the direction of purpose. I absolutely love the book. It's got great journal prompts. It's color coded. It's got yoga poses you could do, but really it's for anyone. So whether you're familiar with yoga or not, this book can help you. And I am so excited to talk to her. So please be sure you stay until the end because she reveals some things at the end of this podcast about her own journey that are so eye-opening and has taught me a lot, and it will teach you a lot too. So without further ado, let's get to today's episode with my dear friend, Tavi Rose. Here we go. Hi, Tavi. How are you?
Hi, Justin. I'm really good. How are you?
Oh, I'm good. I'm so glad to see you again, even though we just talked before we started recording 3 seconds ago, and we've been talking over the past couple weeks. I'm just so glad that you're here. Welcome back to the Strength, Yoga, and Freedom podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoy doing the podcast with you. It's really brings a lot of light to my day, and I really enjoy, talking about all of these things. It's really a fun thing to incorporate into my day.
Oh, I'm so glad that you're here. Now, for those of you who are brand new to this podcast, the Strength, Yoga, and Freedom podcast, Tavi was actually on before, and she actually has the most listened to episode where we really unlocked a lot of healing and other work related to chakra and chakra work, chakra development. And she taught us a lot of great things. And I'm going to put a link to that episode in the description of this episode for anyone who has not heard the first one, because I love that episode. I just listened to it again on Monday. We're recording this on a Wednesday, and I listened to this the other day, and I didn't tell you that, but I listened to it the other day just to kind of refresh. And I'm so glad I listened to it because we're now going to talk about the book you wrote. You have written a book.
Yeah, I did. I actually have it right here.
Oh my gosh. There it is.
Yep. So I wrote that, and it's been a great process, a very revealing process, but a process nonetheless, and one that I'm grateful for because it was also a journey for myself.
The Chakra and Self-Development Workbook is what this is
called. I guess I should have said that is what
it doesn't matter. We know it now, right?
Right. Yeah. Chakra and Self-Development Workbook. And here's a cool feature that because of the way that I did all of the things, like, I don't know if you're going to see it very well, but it does give like a rainbow what's that? What do you say? The rainbow side of the book? Like the pages are in a rainbow order.
Ah, yes, that's right. And I want to talk to you about the colors later because I think that's so exciting. So for those of you who are listening and who are watching Tavi and I, if you did not know this already, Tavi and I met, gosh, it's been almost 5 years now. We did our initial 200-hour yoga teacher training together, but we went through our teacher training and we met through there, and we've stayed really good friends since then. Tavi has since moved out of this area, and I travel all over the place, so we're not always physically together, but we really keep in touch. And when she was talking to me about writing this book and all of the things that go down with this book, I really wanted to have her back on to talk about it and teach us a few things for those of us who need sometimes that realigning process, especially when it comes to chakras. And Tavi is also a 200-hour certified yoga instructor. And so she really mixes yoga with Reiki. And I absolutely love that. So let's start with the first question I have for you, Tavi, is what is the book intended for? And who is the book intended for?
So, the book originally started, as you said, it was going to be a workshop for like a studio. So, really, anybody that was going to that. But then, as I was writing it, I always, especially during yoga teacher training, I wanted to reach beginners because I know that sometimes there's too much fillery information and you get overwhelmed. So, I tried to write my book for anyone looking in any direction towards helping themselves heal some stuff, because I know how intimidating it is to like go even to a therapist, or sometimes you just want your own avenue into self-healing or approaching your stuff, and I tried to make it as beginner friendly as possible, because literally it's for anyone and everyone who has a desire to learn and about themselves or their chakras, or self-development. So it's about getting into in an easy and not so intimidating way. So you get all those self-help books and sometimes it's just so overwhelming.
Right.
So that's where my intention and inspiration was for beginners.
So if I'm someone who, which I am at times, a person who's like, okay, I'm faced with this situation, or I'm faced with this thing where I might perceive it as a struggle, or I'm perceived with a conflict. This book might be somewhere to start and take a look at some ways to align things, maybe work through some questions I might have. Again, with
Yep.
the outside help, like you've talked about, therapist, maybe,
Yep.
or whatever else you might recommend. But the internal work, this might just be something for someone who's like, you know what, I'm fed up with this, feeling like I don't matter, or feeling like I'm stuck all the time. I need something to help me move forward. This would be something that anyone could pick up that feels like that.
Yes, it's basically a self-help tool that when you're, if you need that self kind of moving forward, if you're really going within, or you want to start going within, and you just have that self intention of helping your own self, taking your healing into your own hands, or the curiosities of why you may react this way or that way, it kind of breaks it down into
Can I
all of those.
Can you say that again? The curiosity of why you feel a certain way. Why is that important when it comes to
Because
chakra work?
yeah, so it's important when it comes to the chakra, because your chakras are where they house your emotions. Like, it's where they all stem from. It's where you react or respond from a chakra. So, and it all kind of, one affects the other, and it all correlates down, start at the roots. It's always in the beginning. Each chakra has its own symbolism, and I write about why it's like that in the book, and kind of what they stand for and how they are, whether they're in balance or out of balance, and that's how it affects us and our reactions. And we think it's a personality quirk, but it's probably more of just a reaction into a learned or like conditioned behavior.
And on this podcast, we talk a lot about behaviors, and we talk about habits, and we talk about routines, and we talk about tools that you can use. And so, walk us through the importance of the 7 chakras and what they can do to help us align with our self-awareness. And then I have a follow-up question for that as you go too.
So, in my mind, chakras are important because they are like the house center for each emotion, or why you have a fight, flight, or freeze response in your root chakra. So each chakra develops at different parts of our lives. Every 7 years, they kind of regrow or like rebalance themselves. But being out of balance within those chakras have physical and emotional effects on our well-being. And so when we're feeling these type of ways that we don't understand, things, maybe we don't want to feel angry, maybe we don't want to feel sad or upset, or all these emotions, we either stuff them down to not deal with them, or we feel them too much. And
Mm.
it's because your chakra is either balanced or out of balance. And what in your life, what event caused that, what conditioning behavior created that reactionary response from you? Because in order to live a balanced and aligned life with yourself, like, you understanding your chakras is, my belief, a very good way to begin. All starts at the roots.
So if I was someone who had a childhood that had a lot of trauma, and I know a lot of listeners out there and a lot of people who are watching this also had trauma in their past. And I think all humans have trauma at some level. But especially for those of us who grew up in a household where maybe we felt edgy all the time, or we felt like something was going to happen, or we felt like we don't know what the mood of a particular person will be. We just have that edginess. Is that something that could cause chakras to get blocked? Because the follow-up question I had for you, and I think you started to allude to it, is how do they get blocked? Is that an example of how they could get blocked? A childhood like that, or even things that happen in your adulthood?
Absolutely. So there is a lot that happens within your chakras in your daily lives that can cause balances or blocks. Traumas are a big part of that. Whether, even if it's something that you don't believe is a trauma, because you like, maybe minimize it for whatever reason, it could be causing that block, because then it was an emotional response. And so when you talk about having a traumatic childhood, or that edginess, that's a conditioned belief, and you're unbalancing your chakra because you weren't nourished in that development
Ugh,
of that chakra.
ugh,
So during that
nourished.
time, yes,
Whoa.
nurturing, nourishment, that's what it takes to balance even yourself. If you don't believe in the chakras, that's fine, but they play a role. They play a very vital role in the way that you balance your life and your emotions, and how they affect you on your daily life. And of course, anything you've experienced from your past as a child has an effect on you now, whether you want to believe it or not. I fully believe it does.
I do too. And that word nourish, like, we always think
Hmm.
of nourishment as food, like, oh, we have to eat nourishing foods, which we know we need to do. But
Right.
I guess what you're teaching us is that we need to nourish the chakras.
Yes,
Oh my goodness.
absolutely.
So if they're blocked, it could, if we have blocked chakras, could that, even if, like you said, even if you believe or don't believe in chakra development, which I personally believe that everyone should have an open mind, at least an open mind to it. Um,
Hmm.
so even if if a chakra is blocked, there's work we can do to get that kind of flowing again, so that we can move forward in our dharma, our purpose.
Yes.
Oh,
Yes, absolutely. So, your chakras have, they're kind of like a segue into how we've developed as a person.
okay.
They have an effect on our, like, the root chakra, like I said, the fight, flight, or freeze response,
Yeah.
because we build our foundation in that chakra. That's the first one to develop. We build our literal foundation on that one. So that is how we have our survival response. And so by getting to know that part of ourselves and starting at the roots, we can understand where our reactions come from, or why. And it starts at that early development, especially when it comes down to balancing that. It's not you sleep on it one night, you do one thing and it's balanced.
Right.
It takes effort and work and practice, but every little thing helps. And it's as simple as anywhere from color to food, nourishment. It's just nourishment, and that can be in the realm of how you fuel your body, even with thoughts, how you fuel your thoughts, because that's really important into why your blocks are there too. That negative self-talks, those are very detrimental to your block chakras. They can be the cause of it as well.
That's so wonderful that you say that, because we just there are episodes this season in this podcast where we talk about addiction and how addictions the root of an addiction is feeling like you need the quick dopamine release. You need to feel that happy feel good chemical. And so many of us, us included, we look a lot of times for outside resources to fill those voids. And so what you're saying is we can do the work with the chakras to even start to maybe even fill a void and start to move ourselves forward as we open some things up in the body.
Absolutely, because what's happening in your chakra, why you feel those addictions to those quick gratifications, or why you feel good in those quick moments, but then later it feels kind of icky, because
Right.
those are outside gratifications. And when you start filling the void with your own purpose and intentions, you take away that craving for that outside filler. You're able to fulfill from within. And
Yeah.
that's kind of the whole purpose of this journey, is to fulfill within and not need those outside quick filling responses that we need, the gratification that we get out of those addictions or whatever. You kind of take away that negative space and fill it with your own space. It's like a cup half empty.
Yeah.
You can't pour into another cup half empty, and that's why it's never fulfilling when you have outside gratification, because it's always outside.
I always believe that outside sources should complement the internal happiness. And I think through my own self study and self work over these past 5 years plus, half a decade, both of us working on this,
Mm-hmm.
I find that the outside stuff, there are certain things obviously that I love on the outside. I love my roller coasters and I love all of that, the
Of course,
traveling and
yeah.
the adventure, but like I can't enjoy that stuff if I feel ill at ease. And so the next question is, in the book you have a lot of exercises, um, and you have some ways that you can clear out some chakras. So can you tell us, and align them, I should say. So you have ways in the book of aligning chakras. Do you have any examples that you could share with us, before we get further on into talking a little bit more about the colors? Because I want to get to that too. Do you have anything that you could share with us as far as just some things that the listeners or the people who are watching could come to when it comes to how do I actually align my chakras? What are some things we could do?
So you can take action and intention,
Okay.
whatever you intend within each chakra as you delve into the book. And it starts at the roots for a reason. So one of the main things before starting any kind of chakra work is grounding.
Mm.
And anything as simple as getting your feet to touch nature. It's so grounding. Or being in nature, however that is for you. Being in that environment is a very grounding and centering purpose, and that can help you, because I'll be the first to admit this chakra work can be overwhelming, because you reveal things about yourself that maybe you thought you healed, or maybe
Mm.
you thought things you stuffed down from a long time ago, um, that you think you're all better now because you don't have that reaction to it. Well, maybe you are better, but unless you accepted and, kind of acknowledge it and let it go, it's still there. So
Mm.
we push things away and we forget about them in our subconscious, and it becomes overwhelming. And that's why like grounding is so important, because when you delve into this work, you're delving into your own intentions of healing, and you're awakening things within yourself, and it can bring about a lot of emotions and things that you may not have even intended, and it can surprise you. And
Mm.
it's a good journey, but it can surprise you. So, and movement, that's the other thing.
Movement.
Yes.
So rooting, movement. Um, I just finished, I didn't tell you this yet, but I just finished, as part of my 300-hour teacher training, I just finished reading the Bhagavad Gita again for the second time.
Yeah.
And when you had said before I asked you the question about alignment, we were talking about the external forces and the internal.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the biggest takeaways that I had again from the Bhagavad Gita was when Krishna talks all about the Atman, like the individual self, and how
Mm-hmm.
coming into that Atman, that individual self, it allows you to not only visualize what's going on here, but then it allows you to pour, like you said about the cup, it allows you like pour out. And so if you draw your attention instead of on all this outside world where the senses are so overloaded, and we're overloaded with social media, and we're overloaded with negative news, and we're overloaded, especially these past several years, with rules and regulations and all of this other nonsense that has gone on, that has kind of pulled us away from our inner selves. I think it's so important a book like this is out there to teach and to help others find themselves again through the chakra work. And
Absolutely.
grounding and movement are two things that are so critical, I think, in anybody's life, because a lot of times that's why I think people feel like they've lost control. They're not grounded. That root chakra all the way down there. It's like when you're practicing physical yoga and you're in that. It's like that mula bandha in physical yoga, that root lock. You know how you lock your root and you stand firm in Warrior 2, or you stand in a crescent, or you stand. It's like that lock. And I think that's so important. And speaking of yoga, in your book, you in each chapter, you have what's called yoga as a gateway. So each chakra has a balancing, how to balance, which you've taught us a little bit about already, and this yoga gateway and exercises to take within the yoga gateway. So using yoga as a gateway. But there was a quote in your book that I want for you to talk about. And it is that yoga is a helpful practice in giving your body a voice. And I love that quote. Would you teach us what that quote means?
Sure. So when I was writing and thinking about yoga being a gateway, you're opening up. It's like literally opening up a door for your body to be able to speak to you, because we give it so much crap and we don't think about appreciating it. We wake up and we're sore. We have these thoughts, and, oh, I just suck, or my body hurts, my body sucks. We say these things to our body, and that's what it gives us. But then we trap all of this other crap that we go throughout the day, and we don't take the time to appreciate our own breath, the things that it has provided for us throughout the day. Even as a person who suffers from autoimmunes, I can tell you I get very frustrated with my body, but I also have to remember that I'm very grateful for my body. And on those days where I invite more great gratitude in, I have less pain. I have less, it's just a matter of being present and grateful, because you have to acknowledge that your body is there for you. And by giving it a gateway, you're giving it a way to communicate in what it needs. A little bit of soreness, you need to stretch. If it's pain, it's saying stop. But we need that movement, especially for our minds, because we let our minds control so much of our day, our thoughts, and we forget that our bodies deserve a little bit of gratitude and movement.
And would you say that, because you said your body is there for you, it's communicating with you? I have found that since I've started practicing physical yoga, and then obviously, well, not so much the teaching aspect, I think it helps because you can kind of empathize with your students. But as far as practicing physical yoga, I have never been so in tune with what my body than that. Is that why you have yoga poses? Like some of them, you have child's pose in there. I know tree pose is in there.
Yep.
I mean, there's tons of poses. Is that why you have those poses in this book?
That is exactly why I have those poses. They are an option for any reader or workbook person that wants to apply that movement. They are intended for each chakra, specifically
Mm.
intended for each one to help you get in tune with that chakra and your body, and to be able to learn about yourself. And in those gateways, it's an we think about a gateway, you're walking through it, it's an entrance or an exit, right? And so you're allowing things out but allowing things in, you're releasing what you don't need, and you're bringing back in that self-awareness and intention, and you're kind of turning your mind off. Yoga
Mhm.
isn't just about poses, as you know. Yoga is more of a mindset in what I've learned about it. Yes, it can be very physical, but it's mind, body, and spirit connection. And yoga is a gateway to connect our minds back to our bodies so that we can live cohesively instead of against our own, physical being, because it's so important.
I like to think of it as a higher state of consciousness.
Yes.
And I
Mhm.
think, and I just have your book here, and I'm looking at the root chakra, and you have Sukhasana in there, which is just an easy seated pose, and
Yes.
you actually go into how to actually do the pose, and you talk about organs with a gentle fold and a stretch of the spine, and that's child's pose we're getting into then, but
Okay.
you have each of those in each pose. It's not like you just say, you don't have a picture here. You actually say, like, come to your hands and knees and do this, and then put. So you're teaching the poses through here too, which I think is so important,
Thank you.
especially for someone who never has done yoga.
That was really my intention. I wanted yoga to not feel intimidating, because when you're going into this work as a beginner, it's overwhelming and it's intimidating because you have some really deep stuff to dig into. If you're getting into this stuff, it's not because you're bored.
Right, you're
Typically
right.
there's a reason, there's an intention, and that can feel overwhelming. So I wanted to take the intimidation out of it, and for anyone to feel they're easy poses. I tried to pick My intention for the poses were for them to be beginner friendly, that anyone can do. And the reason why I wrote them in that way is so that you can read and follow along. But I also wanted the readers to understand what it's doing, like the aspects of the
Mhm.
physical and maybe some of the emotional sides of it, without being too informative, because sometimes there's information overload. And I didn't want to go overboard with all of that. I wanted to keep it simple and sweet and understandable, that you could feel like you could do. You can pick all three poses, which is my original intention, or you could just pick one and work with that for the week. There's no
Uh-huh.
um yeah, right or wrong way to do it. I mean, there's a flow, and I recommend going with the flow, because here's another thing why grounding is more important, or one of the most important things. You can be fully developed in, one of the higher chakras, but you're always going to be flighty and off because you're not grounded. Your chakras need to be aligned together, and
Mhm.
starting at the roots is why that's important.
And the root is the first one you talk about in the book.
It is
And
Muladhara.
Mooland, yeah, you talk right about it. And when you talk about there's a flow, that's
Mhm.
important. But I think it's also important for everybody to know, which this comes out in your book. You don't you don't have to. Yoga doesn't have to be a vinyasa practice every time you do it.
Exactly.
So an example is, like, right now I have some shoulder pain going on. So I'm not doing vinyasa yoga right now because I feel like my body's like, hey, something's going on in this shoulder, so you got to slow it down a bit. But that doesn't mean I can't do some yin poses, or restorative poses, or just get into a pose to just balance myself. And that
Yes.
and that leads me to my favorite chakra, the chakra that I love the most, that I want to ask you about. And that's the
Mhm.
solar plexus,
Yes.
Manipura. And with that one, we know that self esteem comes from this one. A lot of us are afraid. We have fear of things. And I'm not talking about, I'm afraid of heights. I mean, that's a fear, but
No.
but
Yes.
I'm talking about the fear, the everyday fear, like, I'm afraid to apply for that job I've always wanted.
Fear of
Or
conflict.
yes, fear of, oh, if I say something to so and so, then this is going to happen. I don't want to ask for that raise, or I don't want to move to another city like you just did, or I don't want to move. I don't want to, whatever it might be, because we know that fear stops us from achieving our highest dharma, our potential, our purpose.
Mm-hmm.
So, can you talk to us about why that solar plexus is such an important one when it comes to moving forward in your purpose and getting out of that feeling so self-conscious all the time, which you and I have both felt?
Yes, actually, absolutely. Which, it was a lot of what brought me here is getting through that too, because I had, a big fear of that too, being on podcasts or, being outside of my comfort zone
Mm.
it brings a lot of anxiety or used to because your solar plexus is where your self-worth it develops in those like preteen years and kind of what you experienced then if you were conditioned to be quiet or on somebody else's as a child if you weren't nurtured in your feelings or I'm not talking bad about everybody's childhood but there are good parents bad parents of course but
Yeah.
um if you didn't feel heard or you didn't feel like your parents were proud of you or whoever a person that you really looked up to saw you, if you feel really like your self-worth is low, um and you don't feel valued because people in your life didn't appreciate that value of your presence and everything, that affects your self-worth and how you perceive your day. You can have fear of conflict and how that can go an unbalanced manipura solar plexus, can be the root of where the addictions are.
Ooh.
Sometimes that's where we need those quick fixes and addictions and things of that nature because we don't feel good enough to do that on our own, because we don't have the belief in ourselves that we have the power to do it. So the Manipura is the fire power from within. So it's
Ooh.
it's your own power. It's solar, it's sun, so it's fiery. And sometimes we forget that it doesn't take a big flame to
Yeah,
ignite something.
you're right.
So,
That's really important. Did everyone hear that out there? Can you say that again, Tavi? It doesn't take a big
big flame. It
flame.
doesn't always take a big flame to ignite something
Oh, that's so
worth
good.
doing.
That is
Yeah,
so good.
absolutely.
And I think, you know what else I think comes from an imbalanced solar plexus chakra is people pleasing. Be-
Absolutely. I actually wrote that in my notes too.
yeah, people pleasing, because you said what
Mhm.
I think a lot of research also points to, and that is when sometimes when you're growing up, you said it when sometimes you're in your teenage years, and I believe that's completely true. And sometimes, again, not saying anyone's childhood is better than another. That's not what we're saying. What we're saying is
Yep.
if there were instances in your childhood or a young adulthood where someone made or multiple people made you feel like you were not being seen and your true authentic self wasn't, quote, good enough, you change who you are, and suddenly because you're changing who you are, you just want to please them to get that validation.
So that
Am I
goes
getting that
into our
right?
roots. Yes, that
Okay.
also flows back down into our root chakra because fight, flight, or freeze response. So if we're people pleasing, we don't have a strong foundation in ourselves. We have, maybe kind of like a shaky system where we feel like we can't, really depend on our own. So um, it affects the next one. It affects your
Yeah.
sacral and solar, like it goes up and goes down, and if it's not flowing with each other it will affect the next one, and
Like
that's
your
why
throat.
it'll be blocked.
And you
Yes,
can't
your
find your
throat.
voice.
Exactly, but you have
Mm.
another chakra to get to before you can even get to that one.
Yeah. Wow.
But yeah, your solar plexus has a big impact on your day to day decisions, either being a people pleaser because you're too afraid of conflict, because, maybe someone in your life, and I don't just mean to like put parents in that. I mean, a teacher, another friend at school,
Yeah.
anyone. It could have been a critical moment, and maybe you had a great childhood, but there was a moment or incident in your life that happens, and it doesn't have to always be within the development of that chakra, but that's typically what happens in the development of that chakra. Incidents happen, and that kind of creates a survival reaction. So we
Ah,
shrink ourselves to avoid conflict, or we make ourselves really big because no one's going to make us feel small. And then, we turn into, you know, not so nice people to be around
yeah.
when we feel like we have to be the one to take that attention from everybody. It's, pretty rooted into that solar plexus chakra.
I could see personally for me, because not only, having you on here is great for our listeners, but selfishly it's good for me too. But because I always say that this podcast is not just about me teaching people, it's about we're walking this journey together, and you're walking that journey with me too every day, and you're teaching, because I was a person at some point that felt like I had something to prove because I, da 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 da. And yoga and the study of all of this stuff changed that for me. And it
Yeah.
really allowed me to come into this authentic version of myself that you see here, which still has more work, as we all know, more work to do. I think that's so important. And
Yes.
oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh no, I was just gonna say if you're on this journey, it's never like I'm gonna read this book and be all better by the end of it. This is a continuing
Mm,
journey that, I definitely don't want it to have that stigma of a one fix of anything.
right.
Nothing in life is like that, truly. And if you want to live in your authenticity, it's a continued practice.
Yeah. That's really important. It's not a one and done. It's
Exactly.
not an event. It's a process. It's a practice.
A
And
continued one.
a continued practice. And I
Mhm.
always say, and when we're talking about the solar plexus specifically, and then I want to move on to heart open, because we're coming up and I want to come into the heart. Um, when we talk about the solar plexus and we talk about, you said, things aren't always, we're constantly working to evolve and, those types of things. I think if we're really much like writing this book for you and
Mhm.
maybe doing a podcast for me or whatever the thing is, this stuff didn't happen like overnight, and we're not done. We're working day by day, one step at a time, not 70,000 steps at a time, but one step, so that you keep the balance. And there's going to be days that you have anxiety, and there's going to be days where you feel
Mhm.
unbalanced. There's going to be days where you feel like you want to hibernate and you need some refueling, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with
Yes.
that. And so I think so many of us get so we beat ourselves up, and I think it goes
Yeah.
to this. I know it starts in the root, but I think when in the solar plexus, that's why it's my favorite.
Yes.
It's all about the practice, the continual. Start. We begin again, like in yoga. You begin again. You begin again. You begin again. And so,
Mhm.
why, when you come up from that, why is heart next? Like, what's the important heart openers day in and day out? Why are they so important?
So the heart openers are so vital to your life because there's a heaviness we carry in our life. And we carry things close to heart, whether we want to admit it or not. And that can affect your physical. Like if we have a heavy heart, we're going to maybe like hunch forward, we're going to feel the heaviness on our shoulders and things of that nature. The heart chakra is important because you're doing it with love. And that also um, flows from your manipura, your your solar chakra, because when you're learning your self-worth, you can love yourself from the manipura into your heart, which will
Ah, yes.
manifest. That's living, to clear out that space to help you live like a freer life and actually manifest the life you want by living and accepting and knowing what your heart is, and your desires, all of that, getting to know that space. I can tell you what that's all about, but that's also a personal journey that everyone will
Yeah.
learn as they go through it. But it is vital. It is very important because, you know, it's your, when you do something, you put your heart and soul into it. And if you act every day with your heart and soul, you're authentic every single day.
That's really important, I think.
Yeah.
And you know what? And we're going to talk about the colors. I'd like to talk about those in a little bit. But as you're talking, I'm going through the book again, it's funny to me that the heart chakra is green. It's
Yes.
a green color where people might
Mm-hmm.
think red, but red is, and I
Root.
know a root, and I know that this isn't the be all end all of color coding here, but it
Right.
it's interesting to me. And when I look at the poses,
Mm-hmm.
Cobra's in here, which is
Yeah.
so important. You have upward facing dog, which, I mean, you and I are classically trained in vinyasa yoga. So we do a lot of vinyasas. Those of you that take power yoga practices know
Yep.
you do a lot of, high plank, low plank, upward dog, downward dog. And
Chaturanga. Yep.
chaturanga. Yeah. You have camel in here, which is a really good
Mm-hmm.
one.
Yes.
And so, and I think when you're doing yin postures too,
Mm-hmm.
you have, like a saddle pose where you're laying back and your heart just opens. Or even if you're doing melting heart and the heart like kind of melts forward and
Melts onto the
allows,
floor.
yeah, I just think those are so critical.
They are. You need an inward, you need a way of looking in and a way of letting go to like release. Because there was that I've talked about this before. I think the first experience I had with my heart chakra opening on its own, like I had no intention. I didn't know. I was just in a practice. My mind kind of off because I was fully in the present moment, just listening to the flow of the class. All of a sudden I open up in a big heart opener, and I felt this overwhelming emotion that I couldn't tell you whether it was grief or fear. So I didn't have like the pinpoint of what it was, but it released itself. It was something trapped so deep
Yeah.
that when it released, it was a relief. It was a big relief and a weight off my shoulders. And I cried in the middle of a hot power class and had no idea why I was sobbing, but I was. And I was like, wow, that was like my first instance of learning that gateway of yoga for myself, because it was trapped. It was something trapped, and letting that go, it allowed me to be able to allow other things in, and that's very important.
I
Like
think so too. And
mhm.
along those same lines, you hear people talk all the time about people will just say, "Oh, open your heart. Oh, just open your heart," like in everyday conversation. But that it's really serious business opening your heart. Like it's not just just open your heart like that. It's serious to really physically open that heart up.
It is. Because we all have been conditioned in whatever way it was for us as younger to now, and we've had to learn how to deal with how we were raised and how we are adults, like the conditioning of being a child into being an adult, and how that works or doesn't work for us in our everyday life. And so, and even the things we experience, the people as a child we watch are kind of like they show us what to do or what not to do, and so we have
Uh-huh.
that depiction to either live up to or go far against. But if you're not living within your own heart space and living with, getting to know it and aligning that with your purpose, you're not authentic in your own
Yeah.
heart. You're going to find down the road, whether it's 20 years down the road, find that that's not, you weren't true to yourself. You were true to somebody else's conditioning of what was to be or not to be. It wasn't for yourself. And it's
That's important.
also okay to change after that amount of time too, because that happens when you start to get to know yourself and you start to really get into that authentic space.
Right.
You will open more than just your feelings, but your mind.
I think if you've experienced heartbreak,
Mm-hmm.
it's important to practice heart opening when you feel ready, because heartbreak feels like this. you just want to like, and if you're watching this, you could see me. It's like you just crunch up, but like that's hard to heal from. And so the opening, practice little by little those, I think, not only the what you've dealt with in your past, but if you're in the present and you have a death that happens or a pet that passes away, or you have a horrible breakup or a divorce, or you found that you've been someone's been not loyal to you or has betrayed
Mhm.
you or stolen from you, that stuff leads to you closing up. Like, I don't want to feel that pain anymore.
Right.
But if you close that up for good, there's no authenticity anymore. You're
Exactly.
just
And
on
that's
protected
where
mode.
exactly. You're in pilot mode and you have a lot of codependent relationships in
Yeah.
that way. But if you don't do that inner work, but you're in a relationship and you become codependent on
Yeah.
a person, or even an animal can do that. Like I had a really hard lesson when I lost, my dog, and that hurt me
Mhm.
so, even to this day. And it was a couple, maybe 3 years ago that it
Mhm.
happened, but it still hurts my heart. But I was very dependent on his presence to get me through the day. And so when he passed, I was lost because I didn't have my own cup. My cup
Yeah.
wasn't full of my own love. I put it all into an outside source. And so when we have codependent relationships, when that person leaves, we feel like we're left with nothing because,
I know people like
yep,
that.
yep,
I
me
know people
too.
like that.
Absolutely.
That if the
That's
if the other person in the relationship like was gone, they would be so lost because their whole life, and for those of you who are listening, we are not suggesting here that you should not be in relationships, because relationships
absolutely
are
not. Yeah.
wonderful for your development, your growth and learning and all of the human experience, but you can't put everything into the relationship. And when you put everything into the relationship, you wind up you try to manipulate and control it, and then you wind up manipulating, because every action has a reaction.
Mhm.
So then everybody around you gets affected because that heart is closed, and you're like, oh, where are you going? Are you getting off work now? Are you done with this? Are you why aren't you eating that? Or like, oh, just those, like, take we could take it down a notch and try to come into it. We're just here as your cheerleader and your support system and those types of relationships. I think that's so
Yeah.
important.
Yeah, it's a balance because when your heart space is blocked, it doesn't just affect you, it affects those around you, those you care about most. You're either going to push everybody else away or involve everybody too much and give too much of yourself
Yeah.
and, feel depleted. So there's definitely a balance and why that's important, because again, into the people pleasing and just wanting to help everybody around you because you have a huge heart, but then you're left with nothing and you're overwhelmed because you have a very empty cup at the end. So heart space is very important to fill that, because you can't really give until you can have a full cup.
That
So
leads us to the third eye center, because your overall well being. In yoga, we put our thumbs to our third eye center to honor, and we bow and we say
mhm.
namaste.
Yep.
In the third eye up here, overall well being, this is where, and I know we have the crown at the end, but this is where, would you say that everything kind of, this imbalance feeling, if you feel stuck, you have this like block in the third eye center? Then if we can feel imbalanced up there or stuck, we can't really see it for what it is that kind of where that third chakra might come in, the third eye chakra might come in?
So your third eye chakra is a lot about intuition
Mm-hmm.
and that inner knowledge and things of that nature. So opening up your mind and not having that a closed-minded approach to everything. That's where that third chakra and your well-being and how that goes, because it's in your mind. That this is your center for your inner knowledge, intuition, your thoughts and everything kind of come from here. Your perception, you perceive things of that nature. Now there's like the psychic end of things where you can go down the clairvoyant, where you can see things and of different frequencies. But that's the belief, and I'm sure that's possible. I'm not a naysayer by any means. Um, but that chakra itself is a big one for people because they go down a spiritual path and don't understand why they're not seeing this or that, but not understanding that it's more about your balance from within and the inner knowledge that you do have. You have to break away those negative habits and that closed mindedness that's affecting your overall well being.
It's funny that the third eye chakra is up here in the middle, kind of where your nose and
The
your
pineal,
forehead.
yep.
Yep. But what else is up here, just beneath your skull, is your is the prefrontal cortex of your brain. And the
Yes.
prefrontal cortex of your brain is,
Mm-hmm.
as we know, and as those of you who have been listening to me for a while, that's your decision making vehicle.
Yes.
So
Yes.
when you make decisions to grab onto momentary things that feel good, but feel, like you said, Tavi, earlier, icky, that does not
Mm-hmm.
come from your prefrontal cortex. That comes from your subconscious, where you're just trying to grab. So when you come from this prefrontal cortex, that prefrontal cortex, and you kind of like, it shuts off. That's why when you're in that freeze or fight or flight or freeze state, you can't activate that real easily. That's like blocked off because you're trying to like panic.
Yeah. So exactly. There's a reason why that develops later in life too. Exactly.
Mm, very, very important. Why did you feel like you had to put, we all know that the chakras can be associated with a color, but why did you feel it was so important to have the colors as they were and then even have it on the edge of the book so that it's color coded? Like, why is that important to you? Could you teach us?
Um, Yeah, that was intended for, I guess, to help your subconscious to kind of create that connection. I wanted you to, if you're reading that, the root chakra is red because when you're thinking red, that's helping you, or you're subconsciously seeing red, that's also helping you put that alignment in and kind of it's putting it into your subconscious, the color to
Mm,
correlate that. And you can do anything as simple as correlating that into your wardrobe if you're wanting to work in that specific chakra. Like you can go as easy or in depth as you like. And that's an option for however you want to do it.
mm,
That's why it was important for each chapter is its own color because working within that space is individual, and working
mm.
within that space helps you align with that space specifically before moving on to the next one. So that's why it was important to me. I wanted the pages to all be that way to kind of help your subconscious make that connection for you.
That's really important. And then why are the questions so important at the end of each of the sections, chapters, whatever we want to call them, each of the chakras? Why are those important?
Yeah, so the questions help us kind of like understand what came up for us, right? If we're doing the questions and the movements are giving our body the voice, then the questions are to help us put it together. Like the questions help us kind of go into that why we felt this way, or it helps us understand what's happened within that chakra that we need to understand or break down or get into in order to find what's blocking it or what's creating that imbalance. The questions are designed to help you go deeper within.
And you have blank spaces here for people to
Yes,
journal,
to
which is
journal.
really important. Would you also recommend putting these blank pages into maybe even your own journaling practice? Maybe in the morning
Absolutely.
or the evening, that kind of thing?
Yeah, so you can journal as often as you want. You can keep the same question and ask it again and again in a separate journal until you feel a better response, and see kind of how you progress or how your mindset, especially in your third chakra, how much your mind has opened. So you have the physical part and now the emotional part, and
Ah,
that'll help you kind of understand where that's coming from. The questions are meant to get in there into each space.
yes, that's important for those of you who who have morning journaling practices, which I really recommend a morning journaling practice. If I start my day and I do not journal, I feel like garbage a lot of the time. I feel disoriented, but just even to getting thoughts down, and now to have questions that you're guiding us with your questions in this book.
Mhm.
That's so important because sometimes, people will put pen to paper and go, I don't know what to write. And
Yeah,
these are great ways to get started. And they're not invasive questions.
right.
They're very welcoming questions,
Thank you. That's
which I
that
think
I
is
wanted
important.
them to not feel too overwhelming, but I
Right.
also wanted them, to ignite something. Um, I wanted you to be able to feel like it brought question to yourself without feeling like an attack.
Right.
Something that could help you understand or relate to in your own within your own self that maybe you haven't thought of, to bring awareness to something maybe you thought you hadn't in a long time.
And there's no right or wrong answers to these questions. There's no
Absolutely
quiz.
not.
There's no
Yeah, it's not
quiz.
at all.
So anybody can answer them. So the last thing I want to talk to you about is really something that curiously for me, I'm curious to know because I know you, but I also want to know the answer to this is how how did this book, this workbook, this tool that you're giving us, this tool which I think is very important for anyone out there who is looking for some way to navigate, a little extra way to help them navigate. What can you teach us about this book and how it's impacted you personally? Because you're just like I am, right? We're just normal people.
Absolutely.
No one
Normal people.
yeah, no one said, okay, here's the way to write a book. Here's a bunch of money to publish a book. Here is a blueprint. Like, no one did that. So, like,
No.
could you tell us? Because this is what this podcast is based and founded upon healing,
Yes.
doing the work to heal. So,
Hmm.
tell us how this impacted you personally.
Sure. Originally it started as a yoga workshop. It was supposed to be an in studio kind of workshop that I originally was just going to put a quick little thing together and have in a friend's studio and stuff like that. And then it kind of manifested into its own book because every time that I tried to do just something quick that for a workshop, it just wasn't enough. It needed more. And then
Mhm.
it kept manifesting. And here's how it affected me because each chakra, it took me about a year and a half, I think almost 2 years to finally get it to where it is now. But really, each chakra, I couldn't move into the next chapter until I was done with the first one or done with that chakra. And that was in my own personal life that I realized, wow, this is affecting me here, and I need to heal this before I can even write about it because I couldn't move forward without that. And so what even began that was because personally I have, my own, what do you want to say, triggering events in a lifetime that you could categorize as different traumas and, illnesses and stuff like that. I've had different things kind of spiral. Felt like at one point I didn't have any control of my life just because I found out I was sick after, you know, a really bad personal event, and it created, a lot of doctor visits and a lot of like negative self beliefs. Why is this me? I'm so young. I don't deserve to not feel right in my own body. I don't feel like I deserve to be stuck. This isn't okay. And so that really started my healing journey of going within because I was tired of the doctors. Well, maybe you're just depressed. Well, that it's not depression when it's, blood work's coming back that something's wrong. And I got tired of the different diagnosis and wanted the root cause of it. And so when I started that, I went down this healing journey and found out that a lot of your illnesses are related to your chakras as well. So when I started doing that and doing that inner work, I started healing from within, even my physical illnesses and my physical body.
Wow. Very, very, very exciting because, again, you are just like everybody listening. We're just
Yeah.
normal people who here you are almost 2 years later and now have a tool. So, do you have any advice that you would give to someone who wants to start something like that, something on a healing journey?
Yeah. Take my advice, if you're thinking about it, stop thinking about it and do it. Take that action and move forward. A body emotion stays in motion. If you're tired of feeling stuck, if you're tired of feeling like you can't have control over your own body, because that's what happened to me. I started feeling like the pain was overwhelming and I couldn't move, and I had days and different things going on where I could not get out of bed, or my body was doing things like that I couldn't control. um, and I got really tired of that. And so when I really looked into the reasons of why and what happened and everything like that, I had to take the action instead of thinking about it. Think and
Mm.
think and think. But again, there's that gateway that your body needs, and it will do the work for you. You just have to open that gateway.
Yeah, because no one else is going to do it for you, right? No one's coming
Exactly.
to do it for you. You have to
Exactly.
do it yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Tavi, I am so grateful that you came on. Would you come back in season 3 to talk to us again next season?
Absolutely. I love joining you for your podcast. It always gives me a delight in my day. So, absolutely.
I would love for you to come back and we could talk about anything else. And I know you won't be writing a book in 2 months flat, but the
Who
next
knows?
who knows? But I think for anyone out there who again wants to grab themselves a copy of this book, I am going to put a link in the description of the video if you're watching it on YouTube, and I will put a link in the show notes in if you're listening to this on your Spotify or Apple Music or Amazon podcast, wherever you listen to your podcast, there will be a link. You can go grab this book. It's economical. It's not huge at all. It's very affordable, and I really am. I'm grateful that you have this out there for people, and
Thank you.
I hope it gets incorporated into teacher trainings, yoga teacher trainings, and even taught because I think using yoga as a gateway to opening up chakras and really paying attention to how you feel in all those areas of your body all the way down is so critical for staying balanced and ultimately becoming a more fulfilled, more purpose driven and happier person. And I know that, we're not going to be happy all the time. That's just not how it works. Because if you were happy all the time, you wouldn't know what happiness really was, would you? But
Right.
I think it's important to not chase happiness, but I think it's important to do the things that give us the propulsion, like the propelling. You go forward, the action, like you said, stop thinking and act. And you did that with this book, and we're grateful. So thank
Thank
you.
you so much. Yeah, you most welcome. It was my pleasure. I really enjoyed writing it. It was revealing to myself as well, and I'm looking forward to the next endeavor. There's going to be maybe a digital course to go along with it.
Oh,
I'm hoping to incorporate that pretty soon. But yeah, I'm just grateful for anybody else that wants to read it. I hope it brings you all of the help that even just the beginnings of it.
don't forget, everybody, this is the Chakra and Self Development Workbook by Tavi Rose. You can grab it in the link. Thanks, Tavi, for being here, and I can't wait to see you in season 3.
Oh, super excited. Thank you so much for having me. It's been an honor and a pleasure.
Thanks, Tavi.
You're welcome.